my FPL Game Week 3 team selection, with Cole Palmer looking like he's very likely to miss the upcoming fixture, it does mean I'm probably forced to make at least one, if not two transfers. In today's video, we're going to look at who those potential players I'm going to be buying, what does it mean for the rest of my squad, and hopefully how are we going to turn things around after a pretty disappointing first couple of weeks. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim, and subscribe if you are new to the channel as well. Let's have a look at how we got on in game week 2. The first 2 weeks have not started particularly well. Luckily, I was bailed out a little bit by João Pedro's 15-pointer this week, so I did actually get a small green arrow. I went from 4.2 million up to 3.8 million. I beat my safety score by just 1 point, and this is just to highlight exactly what one good game week can do. I moved 400,000 places by getting 1 point above my safety score. If you're new to the channel, the safety score is what the number of points you need in order to not change rank. So anything above it, you'll get a green arrow. Anything below it, you'll get a red arrow. And if you match it, you'll probably stay about where you were. So it does move my overall points up to just 108 after 2 weeks. Of course, no Cole Palmer feature at all in game week 2. So I did get Pedro Porro away at Manchester City off my bench, but he did keep a clean sheet. He did get booked, but a 5-pointer for him as my auto sub. I was very, very surprised to see that. And all that back and forth on the deadline stream about who to play, it didn't really matter in the end because I got all of the defenders I was considering. Anderson of Fulham only got 4. He picked up defensive contributions though. But the main talking point for me, of course, we had the Salah return late on. We had the João Pedro haul, but it was the Bruno Fernandes penalty miss on Sunday afternoon. That is a 10-point swing with the goal, probable bonus points, and the points that he lost for missing a penalty. If you add 10 points onto my game week for a player who is under 10% owned amongst the teams around me, it would have done huge, huge things. I can't do anything about it. Really unfortunate. I still like Bruno going forward. I expect him to keep pens, but things would look completely different if he'd have just scored that penalty. Now, what we're actually going to do here very quickly is have a look at the fixture ticker for game week 3 to game week 8. First of all, on the left-hand side, using the overall every fixture, and on the game week 3 to 8 fixture ticker on the right-hand side, I've excluded game week 8 because that is a very popular free hit week for myself and other people potentially looking to buy Manchester City at home to Burnley. These are both taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. If you want to cut it your own way, exclude certain weeks, you can check them out with the link in the description. They're still offering 40% off at the moment. But what I think is quite important, because a lot of us are looking to buy potentially someone like a Semenyo, someone like a Chris Wood. And I'm not saying at all that those are bad players to buy. I'm considering both of them in my transfers for this week. And if the deadline was now, they're probably the two that would end up in my team. But if you're free hitting in 6, you do lose appeal. Nottingham Forest and Chris Wood have Sunderland at home in game week 6, and Semenyo and Bournemouth have Leeds away. So if you're going to free hit in game week 6, you suddenly lose the appeal of maybe and arguably two of the best fixtures that you're going to get from those two players that you're considering buying. However, if you're not going to free hit in those weeks, then suddenly someone like a Semenyo, someone like a Chris Wood for their short-term fixtures, I absolutely love. Whereas if you look at someone like a Crystal Palace in game week 6, they play Liverpool. Now, Liverpool have leaked chances, yes, but you'd still rather not have your player against Liverpool if you can help it. So again, just the week that you're free hitting, if you want to cut it yourself, you can go onto the site and do it. But I just think it's quite interesting as it might impact who I buy this week depending on what my chip strategy looks further down the line. So having a look at some potential transfers, and this does revolve a lot around Cole Palmer. If we get to the deadline and Cole Palmer looks like he might be okay, I might end up keeping him. I'm recording on Wednesday evening and using the price prediction site on Fantasy Football Scout, which again is just pulled directly from Live FPL. So if you're using Live FPL at the moment, you'll see the same numbers on the Fantasy Football Scout website. They're working in partnership. Palmer is not predicted to rise in price on Wednesday. He's also not predicted to get that close to rising on Thursday, but it is possible that over the course of Wednesday evening and into Thursday that might get closer. So I will keep an eye on it. The ideal scenario for me is to wait until at least Friday to hopefully get that Chelsea press conference. There is a chance that the press conference is on Thursday, given that Chelsea are the early kickoff on Saturday morning. But I think most likely it will be a Friday press conference with Chelsea. Ideally, I'd wait, but if there are lots of price changes predicted to happen, I might be forced to make moves a little bit earlier because I think realistically, Cole Palmer is not going to feature in game week 3. And then after the international break, some of the fixtures don't look quite as appealing. So in terms of potential moves, now, of course, I could roll. Mark Guiu is currently on my bench, home to Brentford. He did start and score for Sunderland midweek in the Cup. If I knew that he was definitely going to start, there is a big part of me that would just roll, bench Cole Palmer, hope he's back for game week 4, and just play Mark Guiu against Brentford. But I don't think that is likely to happen. I think Palmer will be out, and I think Mark Guiu will probably not be ready to start yet. In terms of potential transfers, in the midfield replacement, I'm likely to take a lot of money out of Palmer. I like someone like an Mbermo. I like someone like a Cunha, but I've already got Bruno Fernandes in my team. So the two that I'm really looking at the moment are Semenyo and Ismail Assar. Semenyo I like. It Spurs away this week, not the most amazing entry point. Sarr has Aston Villa away. Again, not the best entry point. I probably would end up benching either of these this week if I bought them. And then from game week 4 onwards, the fixtures look really nice. The thing for me is there's 0.7 million difference between them now. Now that Semenyo is creeping up in price, I do wonder about going for the cheaper option. And later on, when we do a bit of future planning, I'll talk about why that money could be of use to me. And then in terms of the forward that I'd bring in terms of that Mark Guiu replacement with all the money that I free up, Mateta of Crystal Palace and Chris Wood of Nottingham Forest are the two that I look at. I almost certainly won't buy double Crystal Palace, so I won't buy Sarr and Mateta. If I go Sarr, I'll go Chris Wood, and if I go Semenyo, I might be more inclined to go Mateta. But those are probably the two 7.5 forwards, given I already own João Pedro, that I would look to buy. If I didn't own João Pedro, I probably would have him top. In terms of one final route, I have spoken about this earlier on in the week. It's something a little bit different, and that's if I really like Ekatike and I want to keep Watkins. Palmer down to someone cheaper like an Elliot Anderson at 5.5 and doing Mark Guiu all the way up to Ekatike. Doesn't leave me quite as much money in the bank afterwards, but I can afford it. Couple of transfers. I still get some Nottingham Forest for West Ham at home and Burnley and Sunderland in the next couple of games. And I also get some Liverpool. I probably would bench Ekatike against Arsenal this week, but if I'm happy to go for a cheaper midfielder, it could allow me a more expensive forward. So just to have a look at what my team is looking like at the moment, we're going with Sanchez in goal. I got the decision wrong when the fixtures were closed last week, but based on the fixtures they both have in game week 3, we're going with Sanchez at home to Fulham with Dubravka on the bench. Into defence, although Anderson is good for defensive contributions, I think it kind of picks itself this week. I don't need to force a defensive transfer. Agbadu, Porro and Williams, let's hope for some clean sheets between them. Agbadu actually got booked again for Wolves on the midweek, and I was wondering if he was going to get himself sent off, but luckily he didn't. Everton at home I like, West Ham at home, and Bournemouth at home is probably the most difficult fixture, but Spurs are yet to concede a goal, and Porro does have good attacking threat. Into my midfield, and this is where I plan to make a slight change, use a transfer, and change my squad structure. So I actually plan that Ismail Assar is the most likely replacement for me for Cole Palmer at the moment. I haven't confirmed that transfer. I'll talk about why I fancy going for the cheaper option of Sarr in a little bit, but the money that I save over Semenyo could be really useful. But given the fixture away at Villa, plus Crystal Palace do play on Thursday evening in Europe this week, means he'll likely be on the bench. It's probably between him, Rodgers, and Reinders to be my first sub, and probably is Sarr most likely at the moment. In terms of those starting midfielders, though, Rodgers is in at home to Palace. With Palace playing on Thursday, they did fatigue in the second half against Nottingham Forest last weekend, so let's hope for Rodgers to get back in the points. Reinders, again, disappointing in game week 2, but was great in game week 1, so sticking with him. Bruno Fernandes in at home to Burnley. We're keeping him despite a missed penalty. It doesn't change whether I think he's a good pick or not. And then Mo Salah at home to Arsenal. Arsenal might be without Saka. They might be without Odegaard. It does knock them a little bit going forward. So maybe Liverpool control the game a little bit. But Salah has been quiet over the past couple of weeks. If they do sign Alexander Isak before the end of the transfer window, I do think there is a possibility we see quite a lot of international break wildcards played to pivot away from Salah to go and buy other Liverpool players and maybe go to Haaland. Because if Isak does sign, you've got to expect Salah to maybe not be as vocal as to that Liverpool team as he has been in previous seasons. But at the moment he's in, we can deal with that later down the line. Then up front, the plan is to go with Chris Wood. As I said, if I buy Sarr, I won't go Mateta, so Chris Wood will be in along with João Pedro and along with Ollie Watkins. Pretty happy with how that will leave my team. I don't really want to use 2 transfers this week, but if Palmer is out, given there's no one else at a similar price and I already own Bruno that I can transfer him to, it makes sense to do a little bit of a restructure and bring in another forward. So those are the couple of planned transfers. Haven't confirmed them yet. Again, we're going to be keeping an eye on the price changes for Palmer and whether I need it. Captaincy is then between Fernandes at home to Burnley and Chris Wood. West Ham have just been all over the place. They just conceded 3 to Wolves midweek, with Strand Larsen, the Wolves striker, scoring twice. Maybe Chris Wood will get those chances. At the moment, it is Bruno captain with Chris Wood vice captain, but I'm not completely against changing it. Few people have said, why not consider a João Pedro captaincy as well? And yes, I will. Early kickoff on Saturday, Fulham are good defensively. We've seen them be difficult to break down recently. And without Cole Palmer, yes, we scored 5 against West Ham. I still think we do lose a little bit of creativity. He might be on penalties. He also might not if Delap and Enzo Fernandez are on the pitch. I am considering João Pedro, Fernandes and Chris Wood are probably slightly above him in my mind at the moment. Hello, everyone. You're probably wondering what is going on at this section of the video. I'm just adding a little bit of an extra. I have recorded the video today earlier on, and my transfers, everything doesn't change, but I am recording at, what time is it? 20 past 10, and Manchester United have just lost to Grimsby on penalties. Now, the slight positive and takeaway from that is both Cunha and Brian Mbeumo missed penalties in the game, whilst Bruno Fernandes scored both of his. So I am positive that Bruno Fernandes will keep penalties for Manchester United, but it does also concern me a lot about putting the captaincy armband on him when the team performed like they did during that game. So as time goes on over Thursday, Friday, I look at my team and other players. If I buy Chris Wood, he would be a consideration, and maybe I need to look at João Pedro a little bit more. So although Bruno has it in this video and he's still probably my favourite given the fixture, I am starting to waver a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't trust them as much as I thought I could. So just to talk a little bit more about the future plan for this and what it does for my team and why I like saving the money of Sarr over Semenyo. So if I made the transfers right now on Wednesday afternoon, it would leave me 0.8 million in the bank. Team looks quite nice. Probably Sarr on the bench, although it could be, as I said, Reinders away at Brighton. Probably not Morgan Rogers. I think I'll start him. So it's either Sarr or Reinders. And actually, based off predicted points, it says I should probably bench Reinders. We'll see how that one goes if I decide to make it. But part of the reason I am interested in going with Sarr. So in game week 4, I'd have the ability to bench Chris Wood against Arsenal. His probably only difficult fixture in the next 4. Of course, Sarr has Sunderland at home. The rest of my attackers have pretty good fixtures. Reinders again against Chris Wood. Reinders has United at home. Chris Wood away at Arsenal. That would be a decision. But what I quite like is if Morgan Rogers continues to disappoint, and let's say he blanks again against Crystal Palace, and let's say I want another Liverpool attacker, this leaves me the money in the bank to do something like Rogers up to Cody Gakpo, which I would really like. It would get him in for Burnley away, Everton at home and Palace away. If Liverpool do not sign Alexander Isak this transfer window, I think Gakpo is going to be a great option along with Ekitike. I could also do Watkins to Ekitike and have him as my second main striker along with João Pedro and Chris Wood, but it would get me another route to a potential Liverpool player. Whereas if I go Semenyo and I want to go and buy Gakpo or I want to go and buy Ekitike, I'd have to either sell Bruno, which some of you might say, Harry, just sell Bruno, and that's fair enough, or I'd have to sell Watkins. Whereas if I buy Ismail Assar, who I don't think is that much different to Semenyo anyway, it allows me another route to go and buy Cody Gakpo. I also just like the idea of having a little bit of money in the bank. My defense next week doesn't look quite as strong. I probably have one defender who doesn't look as good. Nottingham Forest have Arsenal. There is part of me that would look at doing Williams to Lacroix of Crystal Palace if I wanted to. Autocorrect there. For Sunderland at home, that would be a -4, but it would probably only be done if I didn't buy Gakpo in place of Rogers. So if we just go and put Rogers back in there, it would look something like that, and he would substitute in and play him over there. So part of the reason I like Sarr is I like his data. The fixtures look really good. And especially if I'm going to free hit in game week 6, I lose the Liverpool fixture. But also I like the idea of freeing up a little bit of money to either do something defensively or to free up money to do Rogers up to Cody Gakpo if that's the way I want to add in. If Liverpool don't sign Ekitike, if Liverpool don't sign Isak and I want Ekitike or Gakpo in my team, I could also just sell Watkins. The other thing, as I said, that I'm keeping my eye on is the Cole Palmer price change. So this is the Fantasy Football Scout price changes they have built over the past week. The live FPL, as you can see, straight into their site. So we can have a look that Cole Palmer is not predicted to fall in price tonight. He's predicted to only hit -70%. which makes me wonder he might not actually hit the threshold on Thursday night either. My real hope, we can also have a look at the likes of Chris Wood. He rose recently, so that's unlikely to happen. We can also have a look at Ismail Assar. He's unlikely to. And Morgan Rogers. Again, there's not many price changes apart from a potential Cole Palmer drop that could impact my team. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. I hope I can wait till Friday, but if there is a potential price change on Thursday, there is part of me that would look to go early because I think it's unlikely that he's going to play. But that is all. That's the plan. I'm probably going to use 2 transfers this week unless miraculously Cole Palmer recovers, which I don't think will happen, but let's wait and see. Let me know what you think about those players I'm considering buying. Let me know what you think about my team going into this week and whether you would go Semenyo or whether you would go Ismail Assar. Thank you all for watching. Any questions you have, drop them in the comments down below. I'll answer as many as I can in the comments. If not, on Friday, we will have the complete guide video where hopefully I will cover everything you need for the upcoming week after the press conferences, finally a Saturday morning deadline, so I can wait and record once the press conferences and hopefully a Cole Palmer update is in and settled. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.